Good Thursday evening, everybody, or whatever time it is in your area. I was gonna do the good evening, but we didn't need to do that.
You
Um,
gotta full send it. Do it with conviction. Ooh, I love that the
yes.
chat is going through. You're right. I can see it on my end as well.
I wasn't sure because I've only ever been a guest in this app, I think one time. So, and I can't remember. They've done so many updates. It's so nice.
Yeah, it looks
The
really good.
the format and the dark mode is
It's a
really nice. So
vibe.
I
It's a vibe. It's good.
you don't have your monitor light interfering with whatever lights you're trying to
So
use.
true.
So it's nice.
Yes. Oh my god, I just got what you're saying. Yeah, like if you have like a white background or something, then that's just like a whole nother key light added to the situation that you didn't ask for.
And it gets really fun if I use Windows for my live streaming
Okay.
and that it likes to do the automatic yellow screen thing at a certain time of night.
And that's
So if
not what
you're
you
in the
want.
middle of a screen and it goes yellow, you don't want your face all lit up. So
I totally got you. Oh, I'm so honored to be on. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited.
well, I was I saw your tweet that you had put out about you were gonna do was it 5 things about me video or whatever,
Oh
kind of
yeah,
like an
I did tweet
updated.
that. God, I have to
And
get on finishing that video.
I was like, that seems like karma or something telling me, okay, reach out to her now because she's literally saying the things that the idea of what this series is about is what
Yeah.
she's tweeting. I'm like,
Okay.
take opportunity, but to me, it's I don't know when to reach out to somebody. And you've told me before, hey, just email me or whatever. But I'm like, I
Yeah.
wanted to wait for the opportunity to align and everything. I was
It's
like,
so cool that you did because then when you did, it was like an instant yes for me. Like I freaking love the idea of the series. And also I think your email was really good. Like I think that people completely underestimate how powerful a cold email is. Like I think it's completely changed my life so many times. Whether it be like getting to do cool stuff like this with you or like my reaching out to people to have them on my podcast or do whatever. Like no one's doing the cold email thing. But I think that when they do it, a lot of times they do it wrong. Like they'll just send an email without thought. So that's why it's so cool that you waited. And then when you wrote this, I was like, there is so much synergy here. We have to do something. So I'm so stoked. Thank you so much.
one thing I've told people because people are like, well, how do you reach out to somebody or whatever?
Yeah.
They're like, I've seen you've had different people on, and I'm like, well, because you just treat them all the same.
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
if you go to somebody and you're like, oh, you have 181 because you're at 182,000
Yeah.
subscribers right now. If you go to somebody and you treat them differently than you treat somebody who's got a smaller channel, then they're going to be like, well, why are you treating us differently? And that can be offsetting. Plus, it can be kind of overwhelming because the thing that I've realized is that many of our favorite content creators don't live stream very often. And so they're
Yeah.
actually not really comfortable with it. So if you make them
Oh,
feel
interesting.
pressured, I think it would be more likely to get a no than just kind of hey, come chat with me. It's just going to be us and we can just chat like we're having coffee or whatever, like I said. And
That's
it's
really interesting. Have you found that people that are just like content creators, their skills like don't translate to being good on a live stream?
it depends. I've sat down with people before and been like, oh, this is different. You're very lively in your video, but then you come to
Oh
try to live stream
no.
and
But
it's
then you're low energy.
and it's low
Oh
energy and
god.
I'm like, oh no.
That's a disaster. Yeah, dude, that's honestly like one of my worst fears is like I want to make sure that I'm always the same on camera and in real life because I'm like I don't want people to like a version of me that doesn't exist. I haven't experienced it ever with any content creators that I'm friends with, but I've heard like some I don't know, it's also a weird situation because if you've seen them on video, then you already feel like you know them, but then in reality like you guys have never met. So like the dynamic is immediately weird because of, like the whole parasocial thing. But yeah, this is such a cool idea. So wait, give me like a little context. Why did you decide to like do this as like the genre for the podcast, like the behind the minds aspect?
So when I first started, I mean, let's see. So it will be 4 years in January that I technically posted my first video.
Okay.
And then I took 6 months. So I posted 2 videos and then I took 4 months until I posted my next video because it was just so. And then I started doing live stream and I really enjoyed it. And I was doing this thing that I called creator interview.
Okay.
But then I was like, that limits to just creators, right? And
Mm.
I want to eventually get to the point where I'm talking to like musicians, artists, poets, like whether you call yourself a creator or not.
Yeah,
I
it's
just
like
want
you
to
make
like get
something.
to know people.
Oh,
So the
okay.
whole idea of like naming it that, you kind of lock yourself into a specific. And so when we moved, I was like, I want to get back into this. But to me, I'm somebody who's like super analytical but I like to take things from the perspective of like how do you use it more than like here's the specs or like here's
Mm.
the and so kind of for my main channel, my main kind of mantra has been like I don't only talk tech, I live it. It's all about like how you use it and how you
Ooh,
live
I
it.
like that. That's
And
cool.
so behind the minds is kind of like I don't want to always just talk about tech or content creation or whatever. It's like getting to know the person behind it because like you said, we get to know them through their videos, but not really. Like
Yeah.
if you watch an iJustine video, you know like what she divulges and like what she talks. But there might be something that like if somebody doesn't ask it, maybe she doesn't think to answer it. And so like
Yeah.
my goal of like getting to sit down with you and different people is like there's a question that I might ask that's just something like, oh, I never really thought about sharing that, but I bet you people would want to know. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That first of all, I just want to like take a second. The chat right now, you guys are like just showing me so much love. Thank you so much. Like so appreciate being here. I love what you're saying because I think it's like it's so interesting as a creator. You're kind of like developing your relationship with the community with everything that you share. For example, someone just commented about nitro cold brew. Like everyone knows I hate nitro cold brew because I've talked about that a million times. I bet some of my closest friends have no idea that I hate nitro cold brew because it's just never come up. Um, and similarly, like being a content creator, um, there, especially when you're like in a genre, right, like tech or makeup, like a lot of the stuff that you share is in context to whatever that is. So it's always really cool when you have like an opportunity like this, like a podcast, where you can kind of like talk about things surrounding that. And especially when it's live too, you can kind of get like the live audience interaction of like, is this interesting? Do they want to know more about it? Like, should we switch topics? So I think it's also cool that you do it live. And I think it also is an entirely different skill set for you to be able to not only host, but also host live. So very impressed with that as well. And I'm just stoked to be here. This is great.
it's taken time. It's taken like confidence in yourself and like that like you talk about like getting to know people and that's one of the things that like I found out not too long ago that I am like I didn't understand why sometimes when I would talk to people they wouldn't understand the way I was and I found out that I'm on like the spectrum and
Okay.
like the social awkward stuff. So for me this is really cool because I don't know that I would do this in person.
Oh,
But I would like
interesting. That's cool.
but I want to. That's the other thing. Like my goal eventually would like I would love to get to the point where companies are like, "Hey Michael, we're going to fly you to go like sit down with this person in like actual
Yeah.
person and do this like in a room." I don't know, like seeing like Brian Tong and the different ones that were like in the Apple room, like where they were interviewing. I don't know if you saw that where he it was him and Sarah Dietschy and Krista Laura and
No, I don't think I saw this. Was this like a recent interview?
yeah, it was a pretty long one that he did, and it was just them like sitting down and they were talking about the event. And then there's
Oh,
been a
I want to
couple
watch
other
it
ones
now.
that like did the interview. Oh, and Judner was there.
Okay, I'm like an instant
So
watch. I'm gonna look that up right after the stream.
the whole idea of that and like seeing kind of the awkwardness, I'm like, this is kind of cool because when you see their videos, like
Hmm.
that. Although Sarah is kind of awkward, like I love
Is
the
she?
fact that
I feel like
I
she's
love
so
it
like
though,
natural.
like natural, but like she doesn't like edit out the stuff, and it's awesome that she like leaves those things in at the end, and just the way she is with people, like where some people would just be like high detail editing that out, like you know that there'd be stuff that like certain people, if they were to say that, if they were to do the same thing, I think would be
Yeah.
edited out, and so it's cool to see
Oh,
like
interesting. Well,
people
it's kind of
leave
like
those
Ryan
touches
Trahan.
in there leave those touches in there and it's cool to see and like even like when you see like I was watching the Michael Josh video and his like day in the life use of the different phones and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
him like when you see like whoever he's sitting down to have drinks with like showing in the video and he used to like kind of keep that stuff out. But now like he'll like pan to the side and you'll see them walk through the scene. So like incorporating more of his own life into it
Yeah.
is really cool to see. And of course, you have to be careful with that because you don't want somebody being like, well, I got their name, so now I can find out like information about you and where you
Yeah.
live and all that. And I'm like,
Really hard balance. I think that that's like one of the hardest challenges of being a creator is like how do you form like a healthy relationship with your community where like you guys can interact in like through the videos and through Twitter and Instagram and like the ways that you want to without people overstepping. I think that's one of the biggest actually like downfalls of being a creator. It's something that I think about a lot of like how do I make sure that I'm like careful with this. But I love what you're saying because I think there's a YouTuber named Ryan Trahan who I love. I don't know if you've checked him out, but he just recently recorded a podcast and he was talking about YouTube videos. And he was saying that the difference between getting a laugh and not getting a laugh sometimes is like leaving 8 frames of awkward silence and like just like letting that moment breathe as it was in person. And I think that that's like so true. And that's probably why you resonate a lot with what Sarah does because I feel like she really does like let the moments breathe. And it feels like a in-person interaction versus like a highly optimized like jump cut situation. And I've been trying to do that a lot on the channel recently with like day in the life videos, which is like a review, but then with like intercut moments of vlog style moments. And I feel like that's like so important for like humanizing me as like a person and not just a reviewer. And then also like sharing things like that I would never get to share. Like in the Pixel 6a day in the life video I did, I like randomly walked into like an art gallery and I was just like so inspired by all of these photos and stuff. And I think something that my audience doesn't know is that I love photography and like one of my like long-term like dream goals is to like eventually get a piece in like a like art gallery type thing. And I mentioned that in the video because I was just like walking through and that would be something that otherwise would never be mentioned. So it's like what you're saying, right? If like you haven't been asked a question or it just doesn't fit. And so I think like formats like Michael is doing or David Kogan, the Unlocker, like the day in life formats are so powerful because you still get the same value proposition as like a review, but you also get the emotional intimacy that comes with like just watching someone kind of like live their day.
the connection is super important. And then and part of like this whole idea that we just trust from the minute you watch somebody's video, and if like you've find a new creator, a new channel, and you click on their video and they're talking about like, I don't know, like let's say you're trying to do, you're gonna make your own counter at home, like you've
Mm-hmm.
built your own house and you're gonna do the
Okay.
surfacing, that you just trust when you click on that video and they tell you how to do it, they know what they're doing and it's not gonna mess up, is like a huge thing if you think about it. Because what other format would you just like meet somebody in person and immediately trust them? But like you
Yeah.
go on YouTube and you want to learn how to do something and you see it and you immediately trust. And it's like if I find one of your videos and I'd never seen your videos before, I'm like immediately instilling some sort of trust in that you know what you're talking about. You have your hands on these products. Like that's a huge, like, I guess, aspect of just like faith in humanity in a way, which is interesting
Mm.
because a lot of that's kind of, I feel like, separated lately. But the fact that we still have that when we go to watch content, and like if you go, even going to like Netflix, right, and you go and you click on a video and you see
Yeah.
like and you see like ratings for video for movies, or like you're watching stuff on there, the whole idea of like just trust in whatever platform that you're watching is going to provide you like valuable content is huge to me. And of course, there's a lot of junk out there because,
Of course,
it
because
it
anything,
makes its way through.
yeah, and anytime anything is democratized, like anyone can post, there's going to be stuff that gets through. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it is really interesting that when we consume something on YouTube, we just trust. Like, I think Dave Wiskus was saying this recently. Like I've never seen Legal Eagles like bar degree or whatever it is like that you need to be a lawyer, but like we just trust that he's a lawyer because he makes like lawyer react videos and he seems to know his stuff. So it is definitely very true that YouTube kind of immediately sets up this like authority power dynamic situation. But I also think that what's really interesting about being a YouTuber versus like a traditional media celebrity is that the audience feels like you're friends, like you know each other. Versus like a celebrity, I feel like we know that we don't know them. So like when Mr. Beast or Jimmy does something, I feel like people are like, "Oh, that's my friend Jimmy doing it." But like when Brad Pitt does something, I think that they know. And I think that that leads sometimes to like some creator like challenges with like managing that relationship. But I think it's also so exciting because the reason that like I think especially in like the niche communities like tech or something where it's like an interest that is like common but not super common is that you have like this passion in like common with your audience that maybe like you're the only person in their life that cares about technology equally. And I think that that's so special that YouTube can kind of enable that type of connection. Like I remember when I started my channel, prior to that, I didn't really know anyone that was also super super interested in tech. And it was like such a exciting experience to meet people for the first time that were, and then to kind of now like develop this community where everyone's interested in tech, like it's a common passion. And like when the Apple event happened last week, like we were all in the Discord live, like just talking. So I feel like things like that definitely help the audience relationship grow as well.
And it's amazing to me because like I'm seeing a bunch of new names in my chat. And
Ooh,
so it's
I
pretty
love
cool
it.
to see. And I will take this moment to say welcome to all the new people. And if you like this type of thing, don't forget to check out their at the end of this, once this goes from live to replay, um, it will go into a list so that people can watch the other creators as well. And of course, if you like my kind of perspective on things, don't
Yeah,
forget to subscribe. Also, hit the thumbs up button on this. Do all the things.
do all the things.
All of
Yeah,
the
no,
things. I
I love this.
always feel like, how do you do that? And like everybody, I think everybody I've talked to is always like, you just do it. And everybody feels awkward about it, but you have to do it. And I always think that's
For
funny. I'm
sure,
like, because there's never the perfect time. It's
at
like
all.
if you wait till it's too late in the video, if people haven't watched that far, you're gonna lose them. If you do it too early, it's like, wait a minute, have you provided me any value to know that I want to
Oh
click
my
that? It's
god,
that
that's like one of
funny.
my biggest pet peeves. Like when you're watching a YouTube video and you're 10 seconds in and they're like, hit like and subscribe. And you're like, what have you done? Like you've literally done nothing. And now you're already asking for me to like give you two things and want more of your content. I actually like don't ever, or I shouldn't say don't ever, but I rarely in a YouTube video say like and subscribe. But on a live stream, I think it's different because you can actually see the effect of it live. So like if I'm on a live stream, if like I'm launching a logo or something, and I'm like, oh, like wow, we have like 50 likes. Immediately the likes jump up because people can like see that change live. The live dynamic is super interesting. How do you kind of think about like navigating live versus like pre-recorded?
So with pre-recorded, one of my struggles is worrying about leaving something out. So like recently I did a video that was like 5 concerns with eSIM because I knew eSIM was going to be huge, right? I knew all these people were going to be getting their iPhones, so I wanted to get these
Yes.
videos out. So I did like how to do it, how to do eSIM on T-Mobile because that's the carrier I'm on. I did like concerns with it, and then I had like another one in there. And so I'm like, I need to get all these out because I know that's going to be like a huge search topic, of course, once it goes. And of course, it's done pretty well. But the thing is, like, so for me, there's the difference between that and with live, if something comes up, I can just talk about it. Or if I have a guest on, I can just ask and I don't have to worry about necessarily being like, oh, shoot, I should have put that in there and I left it out. Do I like
Yeah.
do it on another video? I don't want to re-record. So I'm the type of person that like if I sit down to record a video and let's say it was 10 minutes long, if I messed up, I'll just start over again and re-record a whole 10-minute video because it's faster for me to do that than to probably edit and get things correct. I've
Really?
learned like that I can just sit down and re-record a video and rather than like trying to take the time and make it seem natural and bring something in there. It's the same thing that so when you're talking about photography, that was my major. That's what I went to
Oh,
school for and
nice.
stuff. So, but one of the aspects of that is like some people would know, okay, I can edit certain things. So I can get my photo like I
Yeah.
can mess up certain things and I know I can fix that. With me, I was like, I want to try to get the photo as close to perfect to begin with so I
Of
don't have
course.
to edit things. So it's all about timing. Like, do you want to spend a little bit more time in your recording or do you want to know that you can like edit certain things in there? And it also depends on what you're doing. Obviously, when you're doing camera comparisons like you do, there's like a ton of editing because you have to know
So
like
much
you have to
editing.
like remember okay, which am I going to put the new this is one thing that threw me off too. So, almost every video I watch, the left-hand side will be
Okay.
like if you're comparing like iPhone 13 to 14, the left
Okay.
hand side would be the 13, the right hand side is the 14.
Yeah.
Usually, and I think that's partially because the way we read, left to right, so it makes
Totally.
sense that in your mind. So when I was watching Michael Josh's video for
Was it reversed?
it was reversed and it kept messing
Okay.
me up of like which like so I kept having to like scroll back to
Yeah,
see
because
in
like
my
you would have
mind
thought one
because I'm
example. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
wait a minute, which is what? So the way that I handle things is like I would rather spend a little bit time planning, and so that's the thing. Like plan, execute, deliver. We all talk about that, but it's like I feel like some people just have like the I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna record, and if something gets messed up, do like the I'll just fix it and edit.
Yeah.
And
Oh my God.
some
To think
people
that
do
you're gonna
that as
fix it
their
in the
thing,
edit is
like it's really
bad.
cool. Like I've seen you do this, like what is it? You'll say like
Oh, like editor
this is editor
Jacklyn.
Jacklyn, and you'll go,
Yeah.
that's different. Like sometimes you
Yeah.
discover
That's
something
like an
way later
intentional, yeah, that's like an
and like an
intentional
intentional.
storytelling choice. But like the fix it in the edit mantra is so bad because you end up like, or at least for me, you end up screwing your editor self to the point that like I actually then procrastinate editing the video because I know that I have to like refilm aspects. I'd rather just get it right in the moment. The editor Jacqueline stuff like will come in if I've noticed like something later in the video or if there's been like a software update or something. But generally, like that adds so much time to the video, just like mentally, that I really try to avoid it. And also the fix it in the edit, I feel like applies to so many things. Like sometimes people will be like, oh, the lighting is bad. Let's just fix it in the edit. I'm like, but you can't. Like certain things have to be done in the moment or it adds so much work and it's never as good. So I definitely agree with you on that. But I will say that my videos are like so highly edited because I'm like constantly thinking about like the beats of the story and like how to best transfer the emotion that I feel to the viewer. Like I really feel like that's what being a content creator and being a storyteller is. It's like you feel something and then you want to make the audience feel it too. Like when I watched Casey's latest video yesterday, like he was feeling excited and like to be back in the New York City, and there was like so much like just built up emotion, and I immediately felt it when I watched that video. Um, and like same thing with even tech videos, like there can be an emotional experience, or it could also literally just be like giving someone knowledge. So it's like I know these things about the product, like let me give it to you. So like that's the number one goal, and if editing can assist in that, then amazing. But that's also why I love live streams because I feel like when you edit, you do lose a little bit of like that emotional authenticity that you get in live streams. And so every month lately for like the logos that I've been doing, I have been doing a live stream. I just want to say, Barry, thank you so much. And then also someone said enjoyed the nitro cold brew, which is like a pretty wholesome comment because I love that you guys know that I hate it. That's like the best thing ever. It's like a little inside joke. But for anyone that is actually wondering, like regular cold brew is the only way. Have you tried cold brew, Michael?
I have
Oh my God,
my
don't tell me you didn't like it. Did you not like it?
so I liked it, but here's the thing I have a
Okay.
problem with. Coffee, if it's too high in acidity, it messes with my stomach, so I have to be
Okay.
like very selective about what I go with. So,
Okay.
I like there's one of the Starbucks ones that I found that you can get at Meijer that comes in like a big
Oh my God, that's like
thing
my
of it.
favorite one. Yes.
Um, I've had to like experiment. Do I go with one that's flavored? Do I go with, and then being lactose intolerant, I'm like, yeah, I can take my, so it's like when I found one that was like a caramel macchiato one that was really good. It
Oh my
was really
God,
well
that sounds
balanced.
like
And I'm like,
delicious.
so that's the thing, with that is like, but people think like, okay, a lighter brew or whatever is less, and it's like, people are opposite of what they think. Like the whole morning blends
Oh,
are actually the opposite
interesting.
of what you should have because a lot of the morning blends, they've actually roasted most of the caffeine out of it in what they call morning blends, and they call it a blend because it's you got like a light and a dark. So depending on how processed that is in there though, people are actually getting less caffeine with some of those than what they would think. So
Oh,
you
really?
want like something that's lightly roasted because you're not removing the caffeine from it by doing that. The darker
Interesting.
you roast it, you remove a lot of that. So
Okay, well, someone's asking if I'm a regular hot coffee drinker. If I wanted to try cold brew, what would you suggest? Okay, I'm gonna give you a bunch of suggestions. Number one, if you have a blue bottle near you, blue bottle, it's great, like very consistently good. Number two, Starbucks has cold brew bottles on Amazon. Those are like my favorite. So if you just look up like Starbucks cold brew, I don't love their in like store cold brew. Like Starbucks is a chain, so I think it's like fine, but it's not amazing. But their bottled brew on Amazon is my favorite, like obsessed. And then the thing that I wouldn't recommend is making it yourself. I feel like it's so time consuming. And if you put in too much water, it like ruins the whole thing because it tastes really weak. But that's where I get started. Avoid nitro at all costs. It's terrible. But any cold brew from any coffee shop will be really good. But I would say like the chains like Dunkin' or Starbucks like just aren't as good as like a coffee shop or the bottles online. If you want to order something to your house, order the bottles. Hopefully one day I'll be saying like order MBT coffee. That would be the dream.
That would be awesome. My father-in-law makes his own cold brew,
No
but
way.
yeah, and my wife bought a one of those like single cup coffee makers, and it has a cold brew setting. So
Oh,
essentially, like that
how does
change
it have a
that
cold brew
control.
setting?
Well, you put ice in there, and then
Okay.
it's got a different drip to it, and then of course you put more grounds in there because you want it heavier to begin with. You know you want more strength in the coffee to begin with because you're adding ice, so that's gonna kind of water it down. Um, but yeah, it's got its own little. I was like, how does that work? Because you're not obviously it's not chilling it. It's not like
Yeah.
hooked up to a refrigerant line or anything like that. So,
Interesting.
um, yeah, I don't know. For the longest time, I drank coffee constantly. Sugar and milk in it. My great grandma got me into coffee when I was like really, really, really little, probably like 2, 3 years old,
When you were 2?
by dipping graham crackers in your
Okay.
coffee.
That's wholesome. I can see that.
And obviously, it wasn't really coffee. It was mostly like milk with sugar and a little bit of coffee.
That's
But then
everyone's
like
start.
I
That's
got
everyone's
into
start.
like that was my breakfast was coffee with graham crackers. And of
Oh my
course,
god.
the graham crackers would break off, so then you're sitting there with a spoon like fishing them out. But
Oh
then I
my
got to the
god.
point I was like, "Ooh, I like the flavor." So I'd like intentionally crush them in there. So instead of having cereal, because being lactose intolerant, I could get like a lot of the powdered creamers were and have been dairy free or lactose free for a long time with those. So I could have that, but having cereal, just having to have like dry cereal all the time was kind of, and because it wasn't until probably 5, 10 years ago that, you started to have like lactate milk and like Fairlife and all that. By the way, if anybody in here is lactose intolerant, if they want the best chocolate milk in the world, or even if you're not, Fairlife is awesome if you can get it.
Ooh,
Like
I haven't heard of
the
that.
how it's super like the thickness to it, and versus like some chocolate milk, you kind of lose that aspect of it. It's not very bold in the flavor, so it's one of my
Interesting.
favorites.
Wait, what is it called?
Fairlife.
Fairlife. Okay, I'm gonna check it out.
I don't know if it's like a regional thing,
Okay.
because being in Michigan, we have, Meyer and stuff is like regional to this kind of the cluster of the United States, and like Target's regional, but like Walmart's everywhere. So I don't know. They probably have their own version of it too, but I've tried like the Meyer brand and some of the others, and like I said, it just seems to be not as chocolatey. So yeah,
Interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah, a good cup of chocolate milk just like hits different. I used to have it a lot as a kid. Um, yeah, I feel like drinks also are like something that really like bonds people. Like one of my favorite YouTubers to bring the combo back to YouTube is Emma Chamberlain. And she just launched her own coffee lineup where like and she was saying that she launched it because one of the things that she does with friends is coffee. And her audience is kind of like her friends because of like the dynamic parasocial relationship that she has because of being lifestyle. And I think that immediately when she launched it, I instant bought it because you want to know what it tastes like. Like I think that that's one of the reasons why drinks are such a strong entry point for creators to get into direct to consumer because like inherently there's this interest of like what does it taste like? Same thing with like Mr. Beast Burger too. And also I feel like we share drinks and food with friends and family, so it feels like it plays into that dynamic relationship. Um on that note, did you see the Mr. Beast store last week?
Oh, the where it was like completely crowded, insane
Yeah.
levels of, and what was it? The most burgers sold by like any chain ever in a single day.
Yeah, by like four
It's,
times. I mean,
I
it's
was like, that
wild.
is
There were like
insane.
10,000 people there. Yeah, he's
And
completely pioneering the space. It's
all
amazing.
the TikTok spin-offs of like Mr. Feast is what they call. like is hilarious. Or like the people I was like, but he's insane. What's insane to me is when he talked about like, oh yeah, I'll make $4 million on a video, but then he turns around and spends the whole entire amount like on the next video. He talks about like he basically I was like, wow. So he's like the one of the most like kind of broke, wealthiest YouTubers in that aspect, where like all the money he makes, he just keeps spending more and more on things. So he like talks about like not
Yeah.
driving a super fancy car or having like a crazy house. I'm like, that's kind of like the Steve Jobs of tech in a way, because Steve Jobs was all about like not having the fanciest house or the fanciest car. I mean, he had like $150,000 house, which for the area was like super cheap. And then
Mm-hmm.
like his house, he
Yeah.
drove like his car, then he drove forever. So like that aspect, I was like, it makes sense when you think about the most successful people are the people that like they just don't, well, obviously if you spend your money, you don't have it to invest. So it makes sense. But at the same time, it's like they don't use it. They just
It's true. Yeah.
do
I mean,
things with it.
I
And it's
think that he's
crazy.
a very specific type of creator. Like there are so few people like this in the world where they're so driven by their vision. Like they're true visionaries where like their lifestyle is just to support their mission. Like their life is their mission. And so for him, it's like creating the best YouTube videos possible, giving back to the community. Like he's opened up countless food shelters, um, and like wells in Africa. He's an amazing person. I really respect and admire him so much. And I think the same thing with like Steve Jobs in terms of like his vision was like Apple. And so like if you read like any like biographies about him, like there's a lot of things that he really didn't do well in life, personally, but he was like so committed to the professional goal. And I'm not like discounting the personal stuff. I think it's not great, but he was so committed to the like professional goal. And there are so few people like that because you have to be like so vision driven for that to be okay. Because like for example, Jimmy, right? Like if you watch an interview that he's done, he talks about many times where he was like literally broke and he has to take out like hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans to make the next video. But he had so much conviction in like the goal of YouTube content and making it that he did it. Like he watched paint dry for hours. He's like a one of a kind creator. I don't think there's ever going to be anyone like him in the same way. There'll probably be another creator that cares as much and is as innovative, but he has completely changed the platform. Like I think on YouTube there have been like different eras of people changing things. Like I think Emma Chamberlain's another one, and he definitely is one of them that has completely changed the entire landscape.
I think that, I just had this like this phrase come to mind, and
Okay.
obviously somebody said, this, it's like, so if you have such confidence and motivation in yourself, there's
Mm-hmm.
two things you could dedicate, and it's money and time, and both
Ooh,
are valuable.
I love
And so
that.
like the thing is like, in money you can't take with you. Like when you leave this planet, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean there have been some people that were, I've read some funny stories, like the guy that like his kids were so bad he buried all he in his will, it was to bury all of his money with himself
Oh
and
my
not leave a single
god.
penny to them, because they were all about like they mistreated him in life and that. But then you had like the opposite of like uh, the I'm trying to think of, there was like this billionaire that his thing was like, okay, I'm leaving like $10 million to each of my kids, but the rest of it, my goal is to spend the rest of it. I'm like, that is a lot of money to spend per day.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like,
What did he spend it on? Do you know?
he went and like gave money away and like invested in small
That's
businesses and
cute.
stuff,
Okay.
and did it in a way that like it wouldn't come back to him, because he didn't want to have it be like the problem of like I invested like $500 million in all these companies, but then that
Mm.
turned into just like billions, and then having like, what do you do to and spend money in a way that you're helping people but not have money come back? So he had to like figure out how to do that, because
Hard
other if it
balance. Yeah,
comes
a good
back to
problem
you,
to
then you
have.
have more to spend. Can you
Yeah.
imagine being like, I'm gonna invest $500 billion and then have it like turn into like all sorts of money, and then you got to figure out how do I spend that money? It'd be like if
Wow.
Apple, if you think about it, they keep rising with stuff like, I feel like they invest, and like some of the money like we don't know about, things like I've heard about like these companies that nobody knows of, and they've like bought out or like invested in rights of like, $500 million, but to a $1 trillion company, that's nothing. But to like that company, that's huge. Like if you think about like
That's a
if it
good
was you
point.
and
Very
two other
true.
people, Can you imagine if like Apple was like, you know what, Jacklyn, we like what you're doing, and we understand you want to start your own cold brew, and we want to like be the tech behind it. Here's like $500 million to start your own like tech and like cold brew company. That would be insane.
Yeah, it is wild.
Like
When you put it like that, it is like pretty crazy how it's like all relative, right? Because for like these big companies, it's even like when a company buys out like a creator company like Morning Brew that was bought for like a reported like 80 million. Like that's a ton of money for the founders and the team, but like for the company that bought them insider or it's not really that much, right? Um yeah, I don't know. I think it's really fascinating to think about. I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier that I really resonate a lot with is like I think the thing that determines if a creator is successful or not is literally just like conviction in yourself, like truly believing in yourself to like almost an insane degree. Like even when it doesn't make sense. Like even when I was terrible at making videos, I just believed that it would work out. And I feel like even now, like the aspirations that I have are kind of crazy, and I just believe that they're going to happen. And I think so. I think it's like conviction, and then I think it's patience because I think a lot of people are not patient. And like they expect results really quickly, and then when it doesn't happen, they give up. And I think that people underestimate the amount that compounding effect has, like how powerful the compounding effect is. I feel like the way I phrased that initially was horrible, but like how good the compounding effect can be for your career, it's pretty huge. Like if you just do one thing every day and you just stay consistent with it, it's going to pay off at some point. And I think a lot of people, what they end up doing is they decide they want this goal, and then they put like everything they have into it for like a very short amount of time, and then nothing happens and they give up. They would be much better off putting like a less amount of work in, but over a longer period of time. Because I think that patience and consistency are really the two factors that determine success. Because over time, you'll just learn more things, and then eventually you'll have enough of the skills and you'll have put enough of the work in that when luck strikes, it's all going to come together and like come to fruition in a beautiful way.
that that makes sense to me. And then and also one of the things that kind of kicked into my mind when you were saying that is like, so there's only so many things you can control in life. And if you can like live on the successes, like no matter how little they are, and the successes being like what you can change and improve upon, then what like the little minor things that you consider a failure, that like a lot of times those things stick in your head. Like
True.
I feel like something that you might consider a failure might is like gonna be in your brain 10 times worse than something that's a success. But the successful
Oh,
thing you should
interesting.
is what you should really focus on, because it's quite often that's what drives you to keep going. And like
True.
the failures are what hold you back, but you can't change those things. And so just move
True.
on from those. But like people just don't like change.
And sometimes if you zoom out far enough, like the failures end up actually being like really important in the journey. Like I remember like 3 years ago, or probably more, it's like 5 years ago, I applied for a job and I ended up not getting it. It was like in the tech YouTube space. And I was like devastated about this at the time. And then it ended up being so good because I didn't get that job and I ended up working with Kevin the Tech Ninja instead, who became a really good friend of mine. And I got so much experience in writing tech content instead of just filming tech content. And then like 2 months after that, I got a job at Android Central making videos for them. And I learned so much from that job. It also provided like financial stability, so I was able to really like dedicate time to NBT. And I would have had neither of those opportunities if I got the first job. And when I didn't get the first job, I was so sad. And so I feel like sometimes like there's a story that someone just told me recently, where it's like an old like tale, like just for a lesson, like one of those stories where this guy like his son falls off a horse and people are like, oh God, like this is terrible, like we feel so bad for you. And he's like, wait, like we'll see. And the next day, oh no, I've completely butchered the story. His horse runs away, and people are like, "Oh my God, like you lost your horse, feel so bad for you, whatever." And he's like, "No, like we'll see." The next day, the horse comes back with a horse friend or something. And he's like, "Oh," and then everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're so lucky." And then his son like rides a horse and he breaks his leg, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, this is terrible, so sorry." And he's like, "We'll see." And then the story is that like the final day, the army comes and is like drafting people, and then his son doesn't have to go because his leg is broken. And so the whole story is like you actually never know if something in your life is like a positive or a negative most of the time until you like really zoom out. So I feel like a lot of like failures end up actually being like a good part of the story. And then I'd also say that like I think it's really easy for us because like we're programmed for survival to like we can catastrophize really easily and like focus on like worst case scenarios and negatives and things. And I think it's super important to be like really mindful of like a bad event doesn't mean a bad day. Like a bad week doesn't mean like a bad year. Like with life, there's always like ups and downs and things. And I think especially in a creator career, a lot of what you do is fail in public. And a lot of what you do is like try to figure out things in public and not have any idea what is going to happen next. And I think that that's one of the things that makes it so exciting is like you're experimenting live. But I think that if you don't have like the mindset about it, like that you're going to grow from every time that you maybe make the wrong choice, it's much harder to make the career work because so much of the career is like uncharted. Like there are so few people that have been career creators because it's a brand new job. And so we're all kind of creating the roadmap in real time.
That's
Ooh, I
one of the
love. No, sorry, go
yeah
ahead.
that oh yeah the first attempt in learning
Yeah,
things.
that's
So
so sick.
one of the things that I've kind of learned to interpret like when we talk about failure and successes, but I feel like if you were to look at it more like attempts, right? So
Yeah.
a failure is just an attempt at something that didn't have the final outcome that you were expecting, and a success is that it did or better than. And
Yeah.
so
Ooh,
like
that's
if you
cool.
look at it that way, it's like, well, if it didn't turn out the way that you wanted it to, then try a, try like a different method or just move on to something else and maybe it wasn't meant to be.
Mm.
And like to me, like I had a job that I like you're talking about that I was gonna apply to do something, but then I found out like if I worked for them, I couldn't do YouTube anymore.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
even though it would be like less stress and like decent paying, but I wouldn't be even really doing something that I wanted to be doing and then having to give this up. So like to me, I would rather just do what I'm doing and build upon it and have it eventually be what I want it to be than to have to like give it up for now and then maybe come back to it, be like, oh, I'm
Totally.
gonna go work, do something, make a decent amount of money and do that for like 2 or 3 years, save up. But then when I come back, it could be all gone. Or like somebody else could have been like, oh, I'm gonna do the same thing and run away
Totally.
with it. And like, so to me, I would rather just have the confidence in what I'm doing and enjoy what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And because there's always going to be stresses. And like you see people like that are multimillionaires and they, well, of course that says things about humanity. People always want more than when they have it, they always want more. But anyways,
True.
like the whole idea of like just stability is never like assured. And so if you stick with what you have and you're confident in what you have and then you just kind of add to it and kind of grow and build upon what you can do, it's really motivating. And then the thing is like we're never alone in any of this journey of things. And so it's amazing. So like even when you are like, okay, email me or whatever and are
Yeah.
back and forth and like you're like, can you do a calendar event? And I was like, I can't get this to work. I don't even know how this worked. And you're just like, whatever. It's like that's the thing. Like I'll figure it out eventually if I need to. Like
Yeah. That's so
like
funny. Yeah, I like live off my calendar, so I'm like obsessed with it, but I forget that like a lot of people don't use the
well,
calendar thing.
I do. Like I have all my stuff scheduled in there, but like
Oh,
I tried
interesting.
to send it. I tried to invite it to you, but like when I put in your email, it wouldn't let me hit like the next to send it out
Oh,
as a. I
interesting.
was like,
Hmm.
what is this? Like
What's
it's
going on
Google.
right
Like
now?
Google has
Yeah.
connection with everything. They do everything. Well, what's going on? So it's funny.
Yeah. No,
That aspect of things.
I think the point that you're saying about like everyone like going through the same experiences, I think it's so true. I think that it's so easy when you're going through something to think that like you're going through alone. There's a YouTuber named Bo Burnham who I love. He's I guess kind of a filmmaker now too because he's been on Netflix. Um, and he was talking about he made this movie called Eighth Grade, which follows this girl's like journey in eighth grade and like all the anxiety that she has during it. And someone asked him like he's like this 30-year-old guy, and they say to him like, "Why did you decide to do a movie about a 13-year-old girl?" And he was like, I was having really bad anxiety, and the people that related to me most were 13-year-old girls. Like when they at the end of my show, because he's a comedian, he's like the people that were like, I get what you're saying, were 13-year-old girls, and it just showed him that like the human experience is a universal one, and it doesn't really matter like what your gender is or your age is or like what your background is. Like we all experience generally like the same emotions to different degrees. And it's the same thing with creating too. I think like even the top creators have a level of self doubt. Um, they question things, they burn out, they struggle to come up with ideas sometimes. They feel the same excitement that we feel when we get one like on a video. Like I feel this as excited about like one like on a video as I did like when I first started. because I think it's like, I don't know, the act of creating is so pure because it's like an idea in your head that then you're putting out into the world, and you get to use like the medium of video to connect with people. And like I'm just seeing right now in the chat, someone said, I've been following Jacklyn since she had like 100 subscribers. Like, how cool is that? Like the fact that, and the videos were horrible then. Like they were really bad. I don't know how this guy did it. But the fact that like people have been there and they can like see your creator journey live is so special. And I think that that's what's amazing about YouTube, because all of your content stays online. So people can like go back 5 years and see how bad the videos were back then and like all the different like little improvements that have happened over time.
The whole aspect of just like what we do is kind of crazy if you think about it.
Yeah, it really is. It's like I think about like content creation a lot in terms of like it's so democratized now that anyone can create, and that's so special. And it's like, how do we create meaningful stuff for the world? And then the other times I'm thinking like, why does it have to be meaningful? Like, can't it just also be fun? And isn't there meaning in that? Like I saw an interview from Ryan Trahan on a podcast called like that, I think it's called the Editing Podcast. And he was saying that recently he's been seeing a lot of YouTubers create these like fake moments of authenticity in videos where like they think that they should have had this transformational experience, but they didn't. But they'll say that they did because that's what they think, that you need to like tell a pure story. And he's like, storytelling is not that. Like you should just like document the experience. And if you didn't have a transformation, that's its own story. So I think about that a lot. Like as I'm going into like the second half of 2022, like the last September, like Techtober, that whole thing, I'm thinking about a lot, like how can I create content that's like authentic to like the actual experience that I'm having right now. And that's really why I'm gravitating a lot towards some day in the life reviews, because it feels so exciting to me to like combine the traditional review format and then also like the moments of like fun authenticity.
So when I was thinking about like, okay, what am I gonna ask Jacklyn? What are we gonna talk about? And of course, nothing ever plays out as like the pre. That's the great thing about this.
Yeah.
You just sat down and started talking, and we're talking about like all
Like the
this
most random stuff in the
randomness
world.
stuff. But like
Okay,
one of the
wait, we
things
can
I was
get on
thinking
track. Yeah,
about
what were you thinking about?
was, and it was funny. I don't know if you saw my comment, but like when you tweeted that you were walking out with like the phone, right? You had got your iPhone now. I was
Yeah.
like, oh great, I can ask her about it because it means she's not on an NDA or anything anymore.
Yeah,
You know, because like
good.
I was like, can I, you know? So one of my things that like, I mean, I know you have like your own like way of doing things, but one of the things I think would be neat to see a perspective on, and I don't know if you can include it in a day in a life or a separate, would be just be
Yeah.
like the aspect of when you're doing a day in the life and you're showing like your journey of like, okay, I'm getting up in the morning and I'm doing this and I'm having this for breakfast and now I'm gonna go do this and I'm going to my office to record, you know,
Yeah.
editor. I'm going to the studio to record. Is like, what about the side of things of like from the almost from the side of the tech? So like not like this is my day in the life of and I'm recording it with my phone, but like how I'm using the tech throughout the day would be an interesting, like I would be curious to know like how are you like, okay, I use my watch to do this, or I use like my iPhone to do this, or I use
I
like
want to make that video. I love that idea.
because it touches on the creator aspect of it, but it's not just for creators because you're
Totally.
showing how you're using it and like other people will use it for those things for creation, but also like, okay, like I need to track exercise or like
Yeah.
the new things with the Apple Watch with the medicine that they're doing with WatchOS
Yes.
9 and with like
There's so
iOS
many features like that
16
now. Yeah.
and even like some of the health stuff.
Totally.
Uh
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on a flip day in life video right now, and I just fractured. Like just got a stress fracture, so I'm not really supposed to be walking that much right now. So it's really complicating filming this video. But the initial plan for the video was to like do a bunch of different things with the phone to kind of show like how the flip form factor informs your daily life, because it's like a product where it's like very form factor dependent, and like you actually need to see it in real life to understand like how it's cool and what the inconveniences are. So I think that video is going to get pushed a little bit to like next week when I can start walking a little bit more, because right now it's like I really have to be careful not to overdo it. But I love what you're saying about like showing the phone in real world, because like I was on a podcast earlier today and we were talking a lot about all these new features that the phone has, like crash detection and the satellite remote service, like all of those things. I think it's so easy to see them and be like, wow, that's cool. And that's it. Like, it's insane. The crash detection uses a barometer to check pressure. And if it notices a difference in pressure, that can help inform if the airbags have gone off. And then it uses the microphone to like know if it heard a crash sound. And then it uses the gyroscope to know if it was moving at 60 miles an hour and now it's not. Like all of that technology and the fact that they did crash detection, all these things is crazy. That's like such a feat in technology and so exciting. And the satellite stuff, equally as exciting. And like the AFib detection, so exciting on the watch. Like all of these innovations, I think sometimes people get so desensitized to them because they just expect it. But it's crazy how good it is. And I think that it really, like, we're doing a disservice as tech creators if we don't shine a light on like the coolness factor and if we just shine a light on like the areas that don't measure up. Like I think that in all tech videos, it'd be cool if there was like a little bit more excitement about the innovation, like even a foldable phone. Like what is that? Like literally a screen folds in half. Yes, there are issues with it, but it's still incredibly cool. And I feel like they're like I with every video that I make, I really want there to be like this level of like optimism. Not forced, but like if I authentically feel it, because I think like technology and the rate of innovation is so amazing that sometimes like our emotional reaction doesn't keep pace with it, and it should.
I like a lot of what you said there because like the idea of so one of the things is like people are like, oh, but things haven't changed in a while or this and that, or like they want to see like a new form, right? Like they want to see this doing this, but at the same time, the company that's making this, oh, that's funny because my phone is magnetic. It picks up the SIM card. Cool. There we also have to remember like Apple makes a few devices where they're competing literally against like 10,000 Android devices across all these companies, and so there's like a different aspect of who do they market to, marketing to like their majority, and they have a specific market. But one of the things that came to mind with what you're talking about, the kind of something that kind of a switch that went on in my head,
Yeah.
it was like tech should blend in.
Ooh,
You know,
interesting.
like
Yeah.
if it sticks out too much, it becomes cumbersome and probably isn't going to be used as much. So the fact that like people don't always mention like some of the new stuff or like talk about how it works
It's
might not
maybe a
be
good
that they
thing.
don't know it's there, but they just like seamlessly transitioned into their use
That's actually a
because of the
really
way it's
interesting point.
incorporated versus like a complicated way of doing things. So like some of the discussions of like the always on display versus like how Android does it, but like a few people have mentioned the when you use your Apple Watch and you leave the room and it automatically adjusts. And like somebody I saw mention today that and like showed they turned the lights down in their studio. I think it was
Mhm.
Farouk was showing it when you turn the lights down in the studio and the always on display actually did dim. So even though you don't have a physical control for it, doesn't mean that it's like stuck at one
Yeah.
version. So
That's
there's a
actually a really
different way
great
of
point.
doing
Yeah.
things in which it blends into your life versus like you have to go in and you can customize it. So some that's like the difference between iOS and Android though is like a lot of the things on the iOS side like yeah, you don't get the customization, but a lot of things are just automatically done
Yeah. It's true.
versus like on the Android side where you do get that, but sometimes I wish you had both. But
I
like
agree.
the
Well, I think the point about like if it blends into your life, then it's actually doing something right. Is something that I feel like you articulated so well because it's kind of true, right? Like the crash detection thing. Like, yeah, I'm like being like, why aren't people acknowledging this? But the whole point is that like you should never have to use it, and God forbid something happens, it will just be there for you. And I think that that's what Apple does really, really well. Is they like they're not always the first to do something. Like Pixel has had crash detection in some way, but they often do it in the best way and like the most seamless way.
tech
And what Fred just said, best tech is the stuff that becomes invisible in your life. And that's actually a really good point. I feel like AirPods, right? They just work. We don't question like how are they pairing to the phone? How does it know like the two different buds? Like it just happens. And then when it doesn't work, we're like, what is going on? Why aren't these working? Because it becomes like such a seamless part of our lives.
I feel like I need to do an updated version of a video that I did. Actually, I did a live stream. I think I was when I was talking with Juan Bagnell. I was talking about it. And then I did a video on it, but I need to do an updated one. I was talking
Ooh,
about how technology is so like invasive in our lives and that like for me, I actually a lot of people they wear an Apple Watch because they just like quickly glance at it, right? And then they can like go away. But I actually found that the and lately it's changed, but for a while I wasn't wearing a smartwatch because it was actually making me pick up my device more because
really?
it's constantly on your arm and it alerts you and then you're like, "Oh, I got to respond to it." Where if I'm not
True.
wearing one, if my phone's just sitting
Yeah, you
somewhere,
wouldn't
I
even
have to
know.
have an action to go pick it up. And if it's like critical enough that it's like an emergency situation, somebody's probably going to call me. And if it's just a text, I can answer it whenever because there's a reason why you just texted me versus like
True,
called,
true,
most likely.
true,
And
true.
so
Wow, yeah.
I found that like I could just like, okay, if I'm busy, I can ignore it. But like if it's on your arm and I'm using it for like health purposes as the one way,
Hmm.
but it also becomes like a method of like, okay, what else is kind of intrusive besides the actual helpful aspects of it?
Yeah, like
So
I just
there's
took
that
off my
too,
watch
like,
while we were recording the podcast because I was like, I don't want to be distracted. I want to like be present for this conversation. And I think also like when you're out with someone, you get a notification on your watch. It's like if you don't react to it, it just stays there. So you kind of have to look at it, but then it looks like you're being rude. So my solution to that is turning off notifications on the watch, and that has helped me get like the good stuff, like the fitness tracking and health tracking, without the negatives of like it creating another smartphone addiction or like deepening the smartphone addiction.
and I wonder if that's why the whole like focus mode synchronization where it happens across all your devices is on by default because Apple's like, well, if you're setting it for like do not disturb or a personal on like your MacBook, you
Yeah,
probably also don't want those same notifications coming through like on your iPhone or your watch.
true.
So like let's have it happen across all things. And of course you can always go and like change that and say like, okay, don't have my watch file like mirror my iPhone or don't have my iPhone sync up that stuff with my computer. You can
Yeah,
custom it.
you
But
can
I
if
think
you want
that's the
to.
reason probably is the default. They're like, well, because everything syncs across or most things, if you turned it off on one, you probably you probably like there's a reason for that.
Very true.
Don't
Yeah,
want
you
that to
probably don't
happen.
want notifications coming through on the other. Yeah. No, I think that's actually really interesting. I agree with you. And it used to not be that way. That's like a new thing.
Yeah, then yeah, the whole idea of that, and then even like the discussion of like things blending in the background. So, with iOS 16.1, the
Mhm.
beta that dropped, they changed how you can edit the home screen, how you can do that from the lock screen, and it's like the initial screen instead of having to do there before it was like two taps to get to that.
Yeah. And now it's like
Now
seamless.
side by side seamless with that is because they probably were like, okay, we're going to put it in the background because most people are probably just going to set the same for both. But then they get the feedback of like, no, that's actually not what we want. We want to be able to do like my lock screen as one thing and the other.
No,
For
yeah.
example, like I like to use an all black background because it's better for OLED and battery life. But
Yes.
I might want my lock screen to be pretty because it's mainly going to be on that a little bit. But then when I go in and I'm on my home screen, which I'm going to be on quite a bit, if I'm opening apps and switching back and forth, that's when I want the black background. Or maybe the opposite, depending on your. So being able to customize those separately and not have it be like, this is the way we're going to make you do it. It's all going to be the same. And to have that blended together is pretty nice.
Yeah, one of
And
my good friends was just showing me her focus mode setups for every single like different thing. So like being present, work, working out, things like that. And I love that that's a new iOS update because like genuinely for every one of those things you may want a different like maybe when you're at work you don't want like a picture of like your boyfriend on your home screen or like maybe when you're trying to be present you don't want any like Instagram notifications but maybe when you're at work you do. And so I think like the work focus modes and like the customization of the home and lock screen to be paired with that is also huge and just like a quality of life improvement that I honestly didn't even think about having as a feature a couple of years ago, but it makes so much sense now.
even like the aspect of things like somebody just said something about leaving your device at home,
I couldn't
and
do it. I would get
and
anxiety. Like if I left my phone at home and I left, I literally would be anxious about like what I'm missing, which is bad. Like that's like the first way that you know that you're like semi addicted to it.
there is a company or somebody that was off, and I'm trying to think of who posted it on Twitter said that they have a deal where they were putting it out there that if you could not use any electronics apart from like emergency situations, so like no phone, no computer, no tablet, no smartwatch, no TV, no like radio even, I think.
Oh my god.
Just for 24 hours, they would give you $2,400 if you could do it.
Did people do it?
Well, they have the initial phase where like people submit and then thing is like, okay, so you submit your screen times to prove it. My thing is, how are you going to do that? I have like 5 phones, so I could just say that
Mm.
I didn't use. Like, how do you know that somebody didn't just
This is
say
a
like
very niche problem, though.
that's
Most
going to
people
be
don't
the
have five.
that, but like the people that are maybe seeing this, like that's going to
That's
be an
true.
issue. Like, but I guess their thing was like they were going to send you a kit for you to like
Mm.
entertain yourself for that time, and I think part of that might have been like a simple handheld camera, and like you got to show us like where you are, what you're doing every so often, and like journal it and stuff and document it. And I think the other thing is they would know, like it would be kind of obvious if somebody, because like somebody's gonna slip up and be like, well, I checked this. Well, how did you do that? Like there's gonna be and there's a lot of like the whole, like I was saying, truth and like confidence and like knowing that, trusting that people aren't gonna lie about. I just think it's an interesting project.
I
I
feel like
feel
people
like
should do it for themselves. Like, don't do it because you're getting paid, but do it because it's like good for you in a mental health way.
that, yeah,
Like
it,
taking a break from tech, I think is actually really important every once in a while. Like I and also I think like at the beginning, like with social media, it like starts and it's like good, right? Like you're getting a lot of positive effects, but like if you stay on it past a certain point, it changes and then it becomes like a net negative where like you're comparing your life to other people. It's too much dopamine and like cheap dopamine, so it's like ruining your attention span. Um, it like can like really skew your worldview of like what's going on because like there's so much bad news all the time and then so many people like living a perfect life. Um, but like in the beginning, social media is amazing because it lets us like learn things, connect with people, consume content. But I feel like everything in moderation, right? So I do think it is important for us, like all to take a break. Like I definitely use screen time limits. I try to stick to them. One of my good friends has this thing where like if you go on Instagram, it will do this thing where if she clicks on the app, it will bring her to another app where she has to like wait 8 seconds, and then it's like, hey, do you still want to go on Instagram? I think that's so smart, and it like saves you from like opening up the app mindlessly. So I think like small things like that to improve the relationship are important versus like getting paid a lot of money to do it one time. I feel like then you're doing it for the money, but like the habit change won't actually happen.
I know there are some like Siri shortcuts that people have developed to do that stuff. Like
Yeah,
you can create a shortcut and have it trigger you to like something else and be like, if you're trying to get away from certain social media, you could set a bunch of icons up and have them as like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, all the different, but have them all go to something that's like a meditation
that's
or
what her
like
thing
some game
is.
or like a coloring app or like a game or something instead to like entertain your time, or like a trivia thing, or and um I think that it's cool to see that they're doing that, and I wonder, like somebody mentioned talking about like the Pixel 7, and with the Pixel 6 series, a lot of the things like that we saw them do is cool to see other companies doing these like things that make our life easier with certain things. Apple did share play, so if you want to help somebody, you can see their device. You can also, watch stuff together, and there's some other aspects of things and things that, the health stuff. But
Yeah,
Google with their Pixel, with like the whole call monitoring and like live transcription, and the whole, well, it shows you like a business's schedule for optimal time to contact them.
that's really cool. I like that feature a lot.
The whole like press one to do this, press two to that, how it reads it out, and then you just tap the section, and then it automatically puts through, like, so you didn't have to go into the dialer and find the right one. It just says like, and you don't even have to be paying attention. You could just see like, oh, that's the option I wanted, and you hit it, so you didn't have to pay attention to which number it was. Those things. So I'll be curious to see like with the Pixel 7, do they continue on that, like, or is it more of like just making that processing faster? So like
They're
the
definitely going to
on-device
continue.
stuff, like what other features do you see Google kind of adding to, or what would you like them to see them add to that sort of aspect of functionality of things? I mean, we see that like they're talking about the Pixel Watch and tablet and expanding like the ecosystem hardware wise, but like software wise, are there certain things you'd like to see Google kind of put their own touch on as well?
So many things. I think Google's like really, really, really focused on AI, and like the machine learning aspect, which is what you're talking about. And I think like that's seen through like Sundar's vision and Google I/O, and the fact that a lot of the AI that they're using are helping is about like helping people with disabilities and poorer areas in the world, like flood detection and saving people by giving them like early notifications that a flood's coming, or like quick translate, live translate features, so people that are like hard of hearing or are in a country where they don't speak the primary language are still able to communicate. All those things are incredible. I think they're going to keep doing them because they're such a big company. They have the flexibility to take on these projects that aren't profitable by themselves to make better products. So I think we're going to keep seeing software improvement features more so than like any hardware improvements. I think software is really where it's at. They have incredible engineers and visionaries for that, and I think Sundar is really leading the vision on that. I think with Pixel 7, we can see a lot of maybe like customization features. It feels like we're moving in an ecosystem right now, like same with iOS, where the home screen and wallpapers and everything are so customized to the individual. I think we're going to keep seeing that because people love things that feel like they're made just for them. And on that note, I'm just going to, because we're already at an hour here, this like flew by
Yes, we
because you're
are.
such a great host. I just want to answer the question, what's my everyday carry? So for me currently, it's an iPhone and an Android phone. I use both on a daily basis, stay unbiased. And then I use AirPods Pro. Those are like my primary form of headphones. If I want something else, I may gravitate towards like the Galaxy Buds Pro. My keys, obviously, AirTags sometimes, otherwise like a Tile. And then a portable battery pack, I think by Raw Power, that has like both the USB Type-C and Lightning cable built in. That's like my everyday EDC. I try to keep it light because clothing manufacturers like have something against giving girls pockets, so there's never enough room in there. So it's like just the bare essentials.
I I think that's crazy to me because then I have pants that I got. My wife got them for me. They call them like tech pants. They actually have a separate little pocket that's
Really?
like to zip, and it's like got like a soft lining on it. And so like I can put one phone in there and then put my other phone like in my main pocket. No, they're not going to hit each other, and like they're up. And it's funny that
That's
they
actually
literally
sick.
came out with
Yeah.
like pants that are designed amongst also having like cargo pockets and stuff. I'm like, how many do we need? But then, like I said, like you said, like for ladies and stuff, like why? It's like their big pocket is the size of like a watch pocket, like for a guy's pants. It's
Yeah, it's true.
absurd to
Yeah,
me.
you can't fit anything in there. Yeah, I went out to dinner last night and I'm on crutches right now because of stress fracture. So I really didn't want to have to like take a bag because it's like wildly inconvenient to carry. But I could not fit anything in my pants. And they're like normal jean shorts, so I had to like take a bag. And I remember Sarah Dietschy talked about this a while ago, she's another tech YouTuber, and she was like, "We really need to invent pants for girls that have pockets." But I think that it ruins the aesthetic a little bit. Like they have to be done in a smart way. I totally derailed us here, but to get back to the EDC thing, I feel like the EDC sometimes, like especially on YouTube, like someone will show like 20 different items that they're taking on a daily basis. And it's like that's like an unsustainable amount of things. Like to have to remember what every time you leave the house to take like 20 different items. I think that like 4 or 5 things or like 4 to 6 things should be like the goal, like to pare it down. Um, but I would love to know like the people that are watching this right now, like let us know in the comments what your EDC is. Someone says, "Can we see the crutches?" The crutches are all the way on the other side of the room, and it's supposed to be limiting my steps. So I'll take a picture and I'll post it on Twitter. But I promise you, they're like right out of frame.
One of the things when you were talking about, with Google and that came to mind is like I would love to pick somebody's brain at Google about like how how much do they have to take in consideration with how quickly they jump into certain things, and have they had to like some of the projects that they've worked on. I know we know that like there's the Google graveyard and all that stuff, like
Yeah.
because of some of the issues that there have been with like um there were some lawsuits with it coming out that like when you were using private browsing tabs that it was still tracking some stuff and like some things like that. How much of their plans for future projects and like integrating machine learning and AI do they have to be like market against that, because there's been some of that stuff that's happened, and Apple and Amazon and all that came out that their versions were like their smart stuff was recording stuff and submitting it, and so Apple gave the option to like not have your voice recording stuff
Yeah.
submitted to them, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
Google did that with their stuff. But like Google, how 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 careful have they had to be, and like has that had a negative impact on their like their 10-year perspective on hardware and software, because do they have to dial back on that to not
Yeah,
make people concerned?
I remember I was talking to Sundar about like what projects in a video that I did interviewing him, like what projects they take on and don't take on. And he listed out like four things. Like, does it affect like the happiness, success, or um we got to look back. I actually forgot right now, but basically it was like if it hits these core values, then they will take on the project, and if it doesn't, then they won't. So like, does it help humanity? Does it help people like become happier or more successful? Is it like a net positive for society? Like those types of things. And if yes, then it's a hell yes when they do it, and if not, then they don't. And I think that like when you're such a big company like that, it is really important as a company to like be aligned on the company culture and the values of like what you are, what you're not, what you care about. Um, and I think the closing thing that I'll say for this is like, I think as a creator, it's equally as important, right? Like as a creator, like obviously Google as a big company, there are like thousands of people and they all have to be aligned and they're like hundreds of millions of dollars going to these projects. But as a creator too, I think it's really important to think about like, who are you? What do you care about? What do you think your audience cares about? And like, so for me, one of the things that I really care about is community and like relationship building, which is why this podcast was like an instant yes for me, because I think like live formats like this are so exciting. So I just want to say thank you to literally every single person that's been in this chat. Y'all are amazing. Michael, thank you to you. You are also amazing. Absolute honor to be on here. I can't wait to see the next episode. Like whoever you have on next, I'm stoked for it now.
Let's see. Next is I have it scheduled out through like August, October 6th, I think is out through. So next week is Latrell.
Oh, nice. I
So
haven't heard of them before. What type of content do they make?
he funny enough actually has like his own business that he does as well. His handle is like Isentech on YouTube on Twitter.
Okay.
He does all sorts of things. I'm trying to think of what his most recent um what was his most recent video here.
Jonathan said you're both amazing. We're all amazing. So amazing. Jonathan, thank you so much for being here. All of you guys are so awesome.
Yeah, it was the fold and flip 4. He did a live Ask Me Anything. Before that, it was like some
Ooh,
cases
okay.
for the iPhone.
I'm gonna go check it out right now.
Philips Hue, Caseology, Parallax stuff. All the Caseology cases for the Google Pixel 6a.
Wow. All right. Well, I'm gonna go check
Laptops,
him
a
out
bit
right
of
now.
everything. So
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. Y'all are the best.
Of
Group
course.
Chat, you're the best. All right. Thank you. Have an amazing night. Going to check out this guy
thank you
right
again.
now.
And
Yeah, of course.
everybody who's watching, if you're not subscribed to her, link is down below. If you're not
That would mean
subscribed
a
to
lot.
me, it'd be awesome. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything but like 0.3 seconds to click the button. Thanks, everybody. I will see you all in the next one. Thanks, Jacklyn, again.
Of
Have a
course.
good night.
Have an
Heal
awesome
up.
night. Yes.
Um,
Thank you.